My name is Danielle Cooper. I'm 32 years old. I live in Decatur, a quiet little town about 20 minutes outside Atlanta, with my husband Ethan and our two daughters, Bella, 5, and Emery, 7. From the outside, our life looks almost painfully normal. We live in a 2-story house with a small garden where Bella runs barefoot every afternoon and Emery pretends she's a wildlife photographer documenting squirrels. Ethan and I are both software engineers. He works for a fintech company. I develop mobile applications for a tech startup. We are not rich, but we are stable. Stable enough to afford a peaceful life. Every morning, we wake up early, make simple breakfasts, pack lunches, and drive the girls to school together. Weekends are reserved for picnics near Stone Mountain Lake or baking chocolate chip cookies in our kitchen, while Ethan hums off-key to old pop songs. And every Sunday, at least back then, we would drive to Atlanta to visit my parents. That stopped a year ago, because a year ago, something happened that shattered something inside me. And it started with a birthday party. It was my father Robert's 60th birthday, a milestone. The house was filled with relatives, laughter, the smell of barbecue and frosting. Ethan and I brought him the latest iPad. I had noticed him squinting at his phone whenever he read the news. Now you won't need to strain your eyes anymore, Dad, I told him. Bella and Emery gave him handmade drawings. My mom, Linda, cried over the crayon scribbles like they were masterpieces. My younger sister, Jasmine, was there too, 2 years younger than me, the golden child. She arrived empty-handed, but full of compliments and dramatic hugs. That had always been enough for my parents. Growing up, Jasmine was sunshine. I was responsibility. I never complained. I built my life instead. After the party quieted down and most guests left, we gathered in the living room. My daughters had fallen asleep on the couch. Jasmine's kids were fighting over a toy truck. And that's when my father began talking about his dream. Montage Palmetto Bluff, a luxury resort in South Carolina he'd seen in travel videos. River views, kayaking, spa treatments. He spoke like it was heaven. Mom sighed softly. Maybe before we leave this world, we'll get to go, but it's too expensive. The room fell silent. Jasmine and her husband exchanged glances. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. I laughed lightly at the time. It felt like one of those distant dreams parents mention, but never expect. But that night, after we got home and tucked the girls into bed, Ethan surprised me. Danielle, he said gently, laptop in hand, what if we sponsor the trip? I blinked. Sponsor? He turned the screen toward me. An Excel spreadsheet. He had calculated everything. 3 days. 6 people. Luxury rooms. Meals. Activities. Gas. Nearly $15,000. I stared at the number. That wasn't a vacation. That was 4 months of savings. A year of tuition for Bella and Emery. Ethan touched my shoulder. It's their dream. Childhood memories flooded back. My dad working double shifts. My mom clipping coupons at the kitchen table. They weren't perfect, but they tried. I hesitated. Then I nodded. Let's surprise them. I truly believed that decision would bring us closer. I had no idea it would tear us apart. The next day, I drove alone to my parents' house. I walked in smiling. I have good news, I announced. We're sponsoring the Montage trip, all of us, together. Mom gasped. Dad stood up in disbelief. But the second I added, Ethan, the girls, you and Dad, their expressions changed. Mom's first question wasn't thank you. It was, what about Jasmine? There it was. I swallowed. She can join if she pays her share. Mom hesitated. Then softly, almost pleading, why don't you pay for her too? She's your sister. The air turned heavy. I can't afford that, I replied calmly. A silence stretched between us. Then I said something firm. If you don't want to go with our family, I'll cancel everything. Dad quickly intervened. We'll go. Don't misunderstand. I left feeling unsettled, but hopeful. The next morning, Mom called. She said she had a friend who worked at Montage and could handle reservations. She sounded helpful. Excited. Too excited. I transferred the $15,000. I sent everyone's information. 3 weeks until departure. Those 3 weeks were filled with laughter. Bella asked about fish in the river every night. Emery lined up her toys beside her suitcase. Ethan researched kayaking safety for kids. I watched my daughter's excitement grow and felt certain I'd made the right choice. Every sacrifice felt worth it. I even began looking forward to it myself. After months of coding deadlines and school runs, it felt like a reward. A bonding experience. A memory in the making. But sometimes the memories that change you forever aren't the ones you plan. 3 weeks later, on Thursday morning at 10 a.m., we pulled up to my parents' house. The gate was closed. The driveway empty. I honked. No answer. I called. No answer. 5 times. Finally, Mom picked up. Where are you? I asked. I'm out with Jasmine, she said shortly. My heart skipped. What about the trip? Click. She hung up. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. A text. Your sister's family will be taking your family's place. They're more fun. I read it once, twice. My hands began shaking. Ethan saw my face pale and took the phone from me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. In the back seat, Bella hugged her doll, smiling. Emery was reading her nature book. They were still excited, still innocent. And in that moment, something inside me cracked quietly. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I started the engine. Because my daughters would not remember this day as the day their grandparents abandoned them. They would remember it as a vacation. And that was the moment Danielle Cooper stopped being the daughter who chased approval and became the woman who demanded respect. I don't remember pulling out of my parents' driveway. I just remember the way my hands felt on the steering wheel. Too tight. Like if I loosened my grip even a little, something inside me would spill out and ruin everything. Bella was humming in the back seat, kicking her feet against the car seat. Emery leaned forward between the seats. Are we stopping for snacks, Mommy? I forced my voice to stay calm. Yeah, sweetie, we'll stop soon. Ethan sat beside me, silent, but I could feel his anger like heat coming off him. He had my phone in his hand. He kept staring at the screen like he was trying to make the words change. Your sister's family will be taking your family's place. They're more fun. They said, more fun, Ethan finally muttered, voice low and sharp. Like you're disposable. I didn't answer. If I opened my mouth, I was afraid I'd say something ugly. Or worse, something broken. We drove for a few minutes in a thick silence, the kind that makes even the air feel heavy. Then Bella asked the question that nearly split me in half. Mommy, when do we see Grandma and Grandpa? I glanced at the rearview mirror. Her eyes were bright, expectant, still believing. I swallowed so hard it hurt. They had something come up, baby. But we're still going on the trip, right? Emery asked, practical, watching my face like she could read the truth. Ethan turned slightly toward me, his jaw clenched. He wasn't letting me face this alone. I pulled into a gas station, more because I needed to breathe than because we needed fuel. I parked, turned off the engine, and then I just sat there, staring straight ahead, as if the windshield could protect me from the reality waiting inside my chest. Ethan reached over and took my hand. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. But the truth was, I had done something wrong. Not by paying for the trip. Not by loving them. My mistake was believing my love would finally make me enough. Inside the convenience store, I bought snacks I didn't even remember choosing. Juice boxes, chips, gummy bears. The girls were happy again within minutes. Kids are like that. They let the moment pass, because they assume the adults know what they're doing. I envied them. Back in the car, Ethan pulled out his phone. We're not chasing them, he said immediately, like he'd already read my thoughts. Because yes, my first impulse had been to drive straight to Montage Palmetto Bluff, show up in that shiny, luxury lobby, and demand answers in front of everyone. But then I pictured Bella and Emery watching it, watching their mother beg, watching their father lose control. And I knew Ethan was right. They booked it, I whispered. Not us. Legally. We're nothing in this. Ethan didn't respond right away. Then he said, then we make a new plan. I took a shaky breath. We need somewhere today. Somewhere the girls won't notice the difference. He nodded. We'll find something. But time wasn't on our side. It was almost noon. Thursday. A long weekend. Every resort within driving distance was booked. I called 3 places, fully booked. 4, 5. With every sorry ma'am, my chest tightened. Bella started singing again, unaware of the storm inside me. Emery chewed her granola bar, eyes narrowed like she could sense tension in the air. Then, finally, Barnsley Resort in Adairsville said they had a family suite. I didn't even ask the price. Take it, I said, voice clipped. I'll pay now. When I hung up, Ethan let out a breath like he'd been holding it for an hour. I turned around to face the girls. I smiled. It felt like putting on armor made of glass. Okay, I said warmly. Grandma and Grandpa had an emergency, so they won't be joining us. But we're still having a trip. Bella's face fell for 1 second. Why? Sometimes adults have important things, I said gently. But guess what? That means we get even more family time together. Ethan chimed in, playful. And more cookies for us. Bella giggled. Emery hesitated, studying me like she didn't fully believe it. But she nodded. The crisis, at least the one my children could see, was avoided. But the one inside me? It was just beginning. We arrived at Barnsley around 3 p.m. The resort was beautiful in a charming, quiet way. Old stone cottages, warm afternoon light, the kind of place that smelled like fresh grass and pine trees. The girls ran ahead, squealing when they saw ducks by the pond. Bella tossed bread pieces and laughed when the ducklings fought over them like tiny warriors. Emery insisted on a mini golf game and somehow hit a perfect shot on her first try. Ethan clapped and cheered so loudly other guests smiled. I tried to stay present. I took pictures. I laughed at Bella's duck impressions. I praised Emery's champion-level golfing, but there was a tight knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. Like my body didn't believe joy was allowed. Later, while the girls played on the small playground, Ethan sat beside me on a bench. "We should block them," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "I can't, not yet." Ethan nodded. "Okay, but if you want, I'll do it for you." I shook my head. "No, I need to see what they do next." Because deep down, I still hoped. I hated that about myself, but it was true. I still hoped my mom would call, crying, apologizing, saying it was all a misunderstanding. That she'd fix it. That she'd remember I was her daughter. I took out my phone, opened Instagram, and that's when my world tilted again. My mother had posted a photo. There she was, smiling brightly in a luxurious lobby, arm linked with Jasmine, surrounded by Jasmine's husband and kids. Behind them, the elegant sign, Montage Palmetto Bluff. And the caption, "Happy with my daughter and grandkids. Thank you, Jasmine, for sponsoring this trip." My eyes burned. My hands went cold. I scrolled down. The comments were already pouring in. "Jasmine is such a wonderful daughter. So lucky to have her taking care of you. I wish my kids were like Jasmine." Each one felt like a slap. Not because strangers were praising her, but because my mother had rewritten reality. She had turned me into a ghost. She didn't just steal the trip. She stole the credit, the story, the truth. Ethan saw my face and leaned in. "What?" I didn't speak. I just handed him my phone. He read it. And I watched the exact moment the kindness in his eyes turned into something darker. "Danielle," he said slowly, "this is not a mistake. This is intentional." My breathing became shallow. I stared out at the pond where Bella and Emery were laughing, throwing bread at ducks like the world was safe. And I realized something terrifyingly clear. My parents weren't confused. They weren't thoughtless. They had made a choice. And it wasn't me. That night, after the girls fell asleep in the suite, Bella sprawled across the bed like a starfish, Emery curled up with her book under her chin. Ethan and I stepped out onto the balcony. The garden below was quiet, lit by soft yellow lights. Crickets chirped. The air was cool enough to make my skin prickle. Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. And for a moment, I let myself lean into him, because I didn't know how to stand on my own. "I've been thinking," I said softly. Ethan looked down at me. "About what?" I swallowed, my voice turning steady, sharper than I felt. "About consequences." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Danielle." I cut him off gently but firmly. "No, not revenge, not drama, not screaming matches." I stared into the darkness, remembering my mother's smile in that Instagram post. "I'm done begging for my place in their lives," I whispered. "I'm done paying for my own humiliation." Ethan waited, letting me speak at my pace. Then I said the words that made him go still. "You know that house they live in?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, I own it," I said. "I bought it 3 years ago. I let them live there for free." Ethan's mouth parted slightly. "Danielle." "And the Camry?" I continued, voice calm. "That's mine too. I let them use it because I thought they were my parents." Ethan's grip tightened. I turned to look at him, and I could feel the tears pushing behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "This isn't just about a trip," I said. "It's about how easy it was for them to replace us, and how proud they were to do it." Ethan's voice was low. "So what are you going to do?" I stared at the garden, at the shadows between the lights, and inside me, something clicked into place like a lock. "I'm going to take back what belongs to me," I said. Legally, quietly, completely. Ethan searched my face as if trying to see if I would regret it. "Are you sure?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because in that pause, I heard my mom's text again. "They're more fun." And I thought of my daughters, waiting in the car, asking when their grandparents would come. I thought of my mother smiling in that photo, stealing my story. I thought of all the years I tried to be good enough. Then I looked Ethan straight in the eyes. "Yes," I said, "I'm sure." Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Not excited, not gleeful, just supportive, like a man standing beside his wife while she stops bleeding. I went back inside, looked at my sleeping daughters, and brushed a kiss over each of their foreheads. And in the dim light, I made myself a promise. They would never see their mother treated like this again. Not by anyone, not even family. When we returned home from Barnsley Resort, the house felt different. Not broken, not sad, just clearer, like a fog had lifted and revealed something I had been refusing to see for years. Bella and Emery went back to school the following Monday, proudly telling their classmates about duck feeding and mini golf championships. They never mentioned their grandparents. Children adapt, adults unravel. On Tuesday morning, after dropping the girls off, I didn't drive home. Instead, I drove downtown, to a law office I had researched the night before, Miller and Associates. The building stood tall and reflective against the Atlanta skyline. Walking inside felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's story. But I wasn't. This was mine. The attorney I met was a calm woman in her early 40s named Ms. Harper. Sharp eyes, measured voice, the kind of person who didn't react emotionally, but listened carefully. I told her everything. The $15,000 transfer, the text message, the Instagram post, the house, the car. She didn't interrupt. She just took notes. When I finished, she folded her hands together. You legally own the property your parents are living in? She confirmed. Yes. And they have no rental agreement? No, I let them live there for free. She nodded slowly. Then you are within your rights to issue a formal 30-day notice to vacate. Hearing it spoken out loud made my chest tighten. This wasn't anger anymore. This was action. She continued, you can also reclaim the vehicle if the title is in your name. It is. She looked at me carefully. Are you certain you want to proceed? Once the legal process begins, it can't be undone quietly. I stared at the polished wooden desk in front of me. I thought about my mother's smiling Instagram photo. I thought about Bella asking when Grandma would arrive. I thought about the words. They're more fun. Yes, I said calmly. I'm certain. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, holding the official notice. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Ethan stood behind me, hands resting on my shoulders. Last chance to change your mind, he whispered gently. I shook my head. No more chances. The next day, instead of driving, I took an Uber to my parents' house. I didn't want to show up in anger. I wanted to show up in clarity. The familiar house came into view, the one I had purchased 3 years earlier because I couldn't bear the idea of my parents renting a small apartment in their 60s. I had been proud that day. Proud to provide. Proud to be the stable daughter. The doorbell echoed inside. Mom opened the door. She looked surprised, but not guilty. Danielle, what are you doing here? No apology. No awkwardness. Just confusion. I stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Dad was on the couch, watching television. He muted it slowly. I pulled the white envelope from my bag and handed it to them. What's this? Mom asked, frowning. A formal notice, I replied evenly. You have 30 days to vacate this property. For a second, they didn't understand. Then they started reading, and I watched their expressions shift. Confusion, disbelief, panic. You can't be serious, Dad said sharply. Mom's voice trembled. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, I replied quietly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. Over a trip? You're destroying your family over a vacation? Something inside me flinched at that. A vacation? I repeated softly. I took out my phone, opened Instagram, pulled up the post. I held it in front of her. You thanked Jasmine for sponsoring it, I said. So, I assume you'll be staying with her. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dad's face turned red. You're being dramatic. I felt something cold settle inside me. No, I said, I'm being clear. Without another word, I walked toward the small key bowl near the entrance. I picked up the Toyota Camry keys. Mom gasped. What are you doing? I'm taking back my car. Dad stood up abruptly. Danielle, this is ridiculous. I looked at them both, really looked at them. Not as parents, but as people. You replaced my family, I said steadily. And you humiliated us publicly. This isn't punishment, it's boundaries. Mom started crying harder. Where are we supposed to go? I didn't hesitate this time. You can stay with Jasmine. She sponsored your dream trip. The truth hung in the air like a blade. They didn't argue that point. Because they couldn't. I walked out without raising my voice, without slamming a door. Just finality. Jasmine, called me that night. Her voice was sharp and furious. What is wrong with you? She snapped. Mom's been crying for hours. I leaned back against my kitchen counter. What's wrong with me? I repeated calmly. You enjoyed a $15,000 vacation. Now you can support them. I didn't ask you to pay for it, she shot back. But you didn't correct them either, I replied. Silence. Then she said quieter, Mom invited us. I thought you didn't want to go. The lie was so absurd I almost laughed. I transferred $15,000, I said evenly. Did you think that was for fun? Another silence. Then anger again. You're cruel, Danielle. No, I said softly. I'm done. She hung up. The phone didn't stop ringing for 2 days. Relatives, family friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. How could you do this? They're your parents. Family forgives. But what none of them asked was, why did your parents do that to you? Only Aunt Victoria called with a different tone. What happened? She asked gently. So I told her everything. The trip, the text, the post, the erasure. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made my throat tighten. You're not wrong. Those 3 words meant more than I expected. We organized a family meeting that Sunday at her house. Most relatives came. My parents refused. I stood in the center of Aunt Victoria's living room and told the story from beginning to end. No dramatics, no shouting, just facts. When I finished, some people looked stunned, others uncomfortable. Uncle Lincoln shook his head. They're still your parents. You have to sacrifice sometimes. I looked at him calmly. Dad is your brother, I replied. Why don't you take them in? His face changed immediately. That's different. I smiled faintly. Exactly. He left 10 minutes later. And I realized something important that day. People love preaching sacrifice until it costs them something. 30 days passed. My parents didn't leave. Not even a single packed box by the window. Maybe they thought I would fold. Maybe they believed guilt would pull me back. But I didn't fold. On day 31, I filed the eviction lawsuit. The paperwork was precise, emotionless, official. 3 days later, they were served with a court summons. Dad texted me that night. You dare take us to court, we're not leaving. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone down. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to convince them to understand me. I was simply letting consequences speak. And this time, I wasn't backing down. The court date arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. The sky over downtown Atlanta looked heavy, like it was holding back rain. Ethan insisted on coming with me. I'm not letting you walk into this alone, he said quietly, while we rode the elevator up to the courtroom floor. I nodded, grateful but silent. I had imagined this moment so many times in the past month. Angry confrontations, tears, dramatic speeches. But when we stepped inside the courtroom, it felt anticlimactic. Cold benches, fluorescent lights, a quiet hum of paperwork being shuffled. My parents' seats were empty. They hadn't shown up. For a brief second, something inside me deflated. Even now, they wouldn't face me. The judge, a composed, middle-aged woman with sharp glasses and a steady voice, reviewed the documents. Property deed in my name. Proof of notice. Evidence of noncompliance. Defendants have failed to appear, she stated calmly. The gavel struck once. Judgment is entered in favor of the plaintiff. It was over in less than 15 minutes. I had won. And yet, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like closing a door that I knew would never open the same way again. Outside the courthouse, Ethan squeezed my hand. You did what you had to do. I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. 3 days later, the county sheriff scheduled enforcement. I chose not to be there. I didn't want my final image of that house to be my parents standing on the lawn with boxes at their feet. Instead, I stayed home and picked Bella and Emery up from school early. We went for ice cream. We laughed. I watched my daughters' faces carefully, wondering if they would ever understand why I had done this. That evening, Aunt Victoria called. It's done, she said gently. My stomach tightened. They resisted at first, she continued, but the officers were firm. They packed their essentials. They have 30 days to collect the rest. I closed my eyes. And Jasmine? I asked quietly. There was a pause on the other end. She refused to let them stay with her. I opened my eyes. What? She said her house is too small, that her husband isn't comfortable, that it's not a good time. A bitter irony settled over me. They only asked for a week, Aunt Victoria added softly, just until they found somewhere else. And she still said no? Yes. The silence that followed was heavy. The golden child. The one they chose. The one who was more fun. When it finally mattered, she closed her door. They're staying in my garage for now, Aunt Victoria said. I've cleaned it out. Put a bed in. It's not ideal, but it's something. I swallowed. Aunt Victoria's kindness contrasted so sharply with everything else that it made my chest ache. Thank you, I whispered. For what? She replied. For being the only adult in the room. She sighed. Danielle, they're learning something now. The hard way. Over the next few weeks, I heard fragments of what happened through relatives. My parents had argued with Jasmine, blamed her, accused her of being ungrateful. She fired back that they were overreacting. Eventually, they stopped speaking. The alliance that cost me everything had collapsed in less than a month. Favoritism doesn't survive reality. And yet, knowing that didn't bring me satisfaction. It brought clarity, and clarity can be lonely. A year passed. 12 quiet months. No Sunday visits. No awkward holiday dinners. No subtle comparisons between me and my sister. At first, the silence felt strange, like phantom pain after an amputation. But slowly, it became peaceful. Bella and Emery stopped asking about their grandparents. They grew into their routines. School projects, dance recitals, backyard camping nights. Ethan and I grew closer too. There was no longer a third presence in our marriage. No external tension creeping into our conversations. We talked more. We laughed more. We felt solid. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about my parents in that garage, about whether they regretted it, about whether they missed us. But I never reached out, because reaching out would mean reopening a wound that had barely scarred. Then, one Sunday afternoon, exactly 1 year after the trip that never was, they showed up. I was in the garden with Bella and Emery, helping them build a makeshift butterfly hotel out of old wood scraps. Ethan was inside making lemonade. The gate creaked open. I looked up, and for a split second, I didn't recognize them. My mother's hair had turned almost entirely gray, her posture slightly bent. My father looked thinner, smaller somehow. Time had not been gentle. They stood there awkwardly, like strangers unsure whether they were welcome. Bella froze. "Mommy, is that Grandma?" My heart pounded. "Yes," I said softly. Ethan stepped outside and immediately positioned himself slightly behind me. Not aggressively, just present. My mother took a hesitant step forward. "Danielle," she said, voice shaky. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. I didn't smile. But I didn't slam the gate either. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. Her eyes filled with tears almost instantly. "We want to let bygones be bygones," she said. "We miss you. We miss the girls." My father avoided my eyes entirely. For a moment, just a moment, I saw them not as the people who betrayed me, but as aging parents. Fragile, tired, human, and something inside me trembled. Then I remembered the driveway, the empty house, the text, the Instagram post. I steadied myself. "You replaced us," I said quietly. "It was a misunderstanding," my mother insisted weakly. I almost laughed. "No," I replied. "It was a choice." Her shoulders slumped. "I miss the daughter you used to be," she whispered. The words landed heavier than I expected. Because I missed her too. The version of me that believed love fixed everything. But that woman had been naive. And she paid for it. I met my mother's eyes. "That daughter," I said evenly, "disappeared the day you decided we weren't fun enough." Silence fell over the garden. Even the wind seemed to pause. My father finally spoke, voice hoarse. "We made a mistake." I felt my chest tighten, because that was the first honest sentence they had spoken since all of this began. Behind me, Bella squeezed my hand. I looked down at her small fingers wrapped around mine, and I understood something clearly. Every decision I made from here forward would teach my daughters what self-respect looks like. I lifted my chin slightly. "I can't go back," I said. My mother's face crumpled. "We're not asking for everything," she whispered. "Just a chance." A chance. The word lingered in the air. I felt anger. I felt sympathy. I felt exhaustion. And beneath it all, I felt something dangerously close to forgiveness. But forgiveness isn't weakness, and it isn't instant. I looked at Ethan. He didn't speak. He didn't guide me. He simply nodded once, "Whatever you choose." I turned back to my parents. "I don't have an answer today," I said finally, "and I won't make one under pressure." My mother's tears fell freely now. My father looked defeated. But for the first time, they looked aware. And as they slowly walked back toward the gate, I stood in the garden with my daughters and realized something profound. I had lost the illusion of unconditional parental love, but I had gained something stronger. Boundaries. And whether I choose forgiveness or distance, this time, it will be on my terms. Part 5. The woman I became. After they walked out of the gate that afternoon, the garden felt unusually quiet. Bella looked up at me. "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at you?" she asked softly. Children don't miss much. I crouched down to her level and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "No," I said gently. "Sometimes adults hurt each other, and sometimes it takes time to fix it." Emery crossed her arms thoughtfully. "Are we going to see them again?" I didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't just about my parents anymore. It was about the example I was setting. "I don't know yet," I admitted honestly, "but whatever happens, it will be healthy and safe." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on my back. That evening, after the girls went to bed, we sat on the couch. The same couch where, a year ago, Ethan had shown me that spreadsheet with $15,000 highlighted in bold. Life had changed in 12 months. So had I. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked quietly. "The eviction? Yes. I thought about that carefully." I pictured my mother's trembling hands holding the notice, my father's empty seat in the courtroom, the garage, Jasmine closing her door on them. Regret wasn't the word. Pain was. But pain doesn't always mean wrong. "No," I said finally. "I regret trusting them blindly. I don't regret protecting us." Ethan nodded slowly. "They looked different today," he said. They did. Smaller. Older. Humbled. And that's what made this harder than I expected. Because anger is easy when the other person looks powerful. It's harder when they look fragile. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Not dramatic. Not defensive. Just simple. "We're sorry." I stared at those 2 words for a long time. A year ago, I would have melted. A year ago, that apology would have been enough. But growth changes your standards. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I called Aunt Victoria. "They apologized," I told her. She was quiet for a moment. Do you believe them? She asked gently. I believe they're uncomfortable, I replied honestly. I don't know if that's the same thing. That's fair, she said. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean going back to the way things were. That sentence settled into me. Because the truth was, I didn't want to go back. I didn't want Sunday dinners where I felt compared. I didn't want subtle favoritism disguised as, that's just how she is. I didn't want to keep earning my place. I wanted equality, respect, acknowledgement. And those aren't gifts you beg for. They're standards you enforce. A week later, I invited my parents to meet at a neutral place, a small cafe in Decatur. Public, calm, controlled. Ethan insisted on coming, but he stayed at another table, close enough to step in if needed. When my parents walked in, they looked nervous, not defensive, not proud, just unsure. We sat across from each other. No hugs, no small talk. My mother spoke first. We handled everything wrong, she said quietly. We thought if Jasmine felt special, she would be more involved with us. There it was, the confession behind the behavior. Favoritism born out of fear. And what about me? I asked calmly. My father looked up for the first time. We thought you didn't need us, he said. You were always strong, independent. I felt a strange mix of emotions. So you punished me for not being needy? I asked. No, my mother whispered quickly. We just assumed you'd understand. I leaned back slightly. That's the problem, I said evenly. You assumed my love was unconditional, that I'd always fix things, always pay, always forgive. Silence. Tears gathered in my mother's eyes again. We were wrong, she said. This time I believe she meant it. But belief doesn't erase history. I need you to understand something, I continued. You didn't just hurt me, you hurt my daughters. They were waiting in that car, excited. My father's jaw tightened. We didn't think about that, he admitted quietly. And that was the most honest thing he had said in years. We talked for nearly an hour. No shouting. No dramatics. Just uncomfortable truths. When it was time to leave, my mother hesitated. Can we see the girls? She asked softly. I paused. A year ago, I would have said no without hesitation. Today, I evaluated differently. Boundaries don't mean walls. They mean rules. Supervised visits, I said firmly. At our house, no favoritism, no comparing, no rewriting stories. They nodded immediately. Of course, my mother said. And for the first time in a long time, they looked like parents asking for permission, not authority demanding loyalty. That Sunday they came over. Bella was cautious at first, Emery observed quietly. But children are forgiving in ways adults aren't. They showed their grandparents the butterfly hotel in the garden. My mother complimented both girls equally. My father listened carefully when Emery explained how ducks fight over bread. I watched everything, every glance, every tone. Not because I was paranoid, but because trust once broken is rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. That night, after they left, Ethan wrapped his arms around me. You did it differently, he said. Yes, I replied softly. Do you feel better? I considered that. A year ago I had wanted justice, and I got it. But justice alone doesn't heal. Boundaries do. Growth does. Self-respect does. I feel balanced, I answered. Because the truth is, forgiveness is not about excusing what happened. It's about deciding that your peace is more important than your pride. And reconciliation is not automatic. It's earned. Slowly. Consistently. Under conditions that protect what matters most. A year ago, I was the daughter trying to prove her worth. Today, I am Danielle Cooper. A wife. A mother. A woman who knows that love without respect is not love at all. And whether my parents remain in my life or drift away again, it will never be at the cost of my children's dignity. Or my own.